Welcome back to another edition of Big in Biz with DiViz. I'm Craig DiVizzio, and my guest today was my best friend, Meg O'Connell. She is founder and CEO of Global Disability Inclusion. As the name suggests, it's all about getting companies to first be compliant and then go to the next step, and that is embracing diversity inclusion. I know I learned a lot by listening to her. You're going to learn a lot too. Stay tuned. Welcome to another edition of Big in Biz with DiViz. I'm Craig DiVizzio, president of DiVizzio International, and my guest today is Meg O'Connell. I'm going to give you full disclosure right at the beginning. She is my best friend, and I'm so excited to have her on the show. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Meg is founder and CEO of Global Disability Inclusion. She's an internationally recognized disability employment and inclusion expert with over 25 years of experience. Meg provides strategic program design and implementation of disability employment and inclusion programs for Global 500 companies, U.S. federal contractors, colleges and universities, nonprofits, and foundations. Prior to founding Global Diversity Inclusion, Meg was vice president of the National Organization on Disability. She's been quoted in Diversity Executive Magazine, The Huffington Post, Scientific America, as well as writing articles for Diverse Ability Magazine and numerous trade magazines. Meg's a board member of the United States International Council on Disabilities and an expert resource to the Valuable 500, a global organization working with CEOs to include disability on their board agendas. She's also married to James Colley, who's also an entrepreneur. He is founder and CEO of Ice Mule Coolers. It is my pleasure, no doubt about it, to welcome my colleague, my best friend to the show. Meg, welcome to the show.
Hey, Craig, good to be here. My only caveat for joining is no telling tales out of school.
I thought, it's interesting that you would even say that, because I thought about, okay, listen, I've known her for so long. I can talk about her business career. Man, I can tell her a lot about our personal lives. And I'm thinking, what would be appropriate? And I said, okay, I'll just skip all of those. So we're on the same page there. So,
Good.
Yeah, let's talk about your entrepreneurial journey because it has been a very interesting one. I'm excited to hear you talk about it because I can remember the conversations we had as you were going through all of these different steps. So talk a little bit about from where you started and then catch us up to where you are now.
Yeah, it's been a fun journey. And, at this stage in my life, you can see how the different pieces and moves that you make in your career lead you to where you are now, and those kind of invisible hands guiding you to where you need to be. And I think the first sign that I was going to be an entrepreneur or knew that I had the entrepreneurial spirit was when I was working for a bank, and I was working as a teller, and I was taking sign language classes in the evening. And one of the activities that we had to do as part of our homework assignments was to go to what they called silent dinners. And the deaf community would meet at the local food court mall and welcome students in so you could practice your sign language. Lots of hilarious mistakes at that, but that's how you learn, right? Through your mistakes. And I started having a following of deaf customers come to my teller window, and customers that were driving 20, 30, 40 miles just to make a deposit because there was someone that could talk to them. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot in Atlanta, driving 40 miles, not a big deal, but this was Richmond, Virginia 20 years ago. So it was still small town. And so it really raised the question for me, what is the bank doing for customers with disabilities? And because I was just learning, I was like, really? Am I the best we've got? And as I started doing research, I found out that yes, in fact, I was the best we
And
had.
that was scary.
So it was quite frightening. And it was really an eye opener for me because I saw the opportunity and heard firsthand from the deaf community about the lack of service, the lack of integration, the lack of just basic banking knowledge and understanding. And that really started my career in disability inclusion. And like any good 20 something at the time, I wrote a memo to the CEO. I'd heard him speak at a all hands meeting, how he had an open door policy, and this was like my first job, so I took him up on his word and I wrote him a note and said, I've done all this research on the deaf community. And at that time, this was for SunTrust Bank. At that time, it was Crestar before it became SunTrust. So we were in Virginia, Maryland, and DC, which has the second largest deaf and hard of hearing population in the country.
Oh, okay.
Because Gallaudet University is in DC.
Right.
So I did all this research and just talked about if we provided a little bit of service, a little bit of attention, how much additional revenue that would bring into the bank. And of course, that's music to everyone's ears, right? So whether he thought it was crazy or was like, who's this teller sending me a note? He agreed to meet with me. And, he said, I actually think that this is a pretty good idea. And he said, let's move you into retail strategic marketing and align you with that team and see what we can do. So we produced the first ever, and I'll age myself by saying videotape series for deaf and hard of hearing customers that was done all in American Sign Language with open captioning by members of the deaf community. And so we had videotape on the basics of banking, checking, savings, money market accounts. We did one on how to buy a home, and then retirement planning. And, shockingly still, it is the only one of its kind to date.
Oh my
still.
gosh.
So
Oh.
it just goes to show how much there still is to be done, 30 years later since doing that. So that was really the first kind of inclination that I was like, wow, I can have a big idea and make something cool happen. I just need the right supports around it too. And I remember when I knew it was time to leave the bank, because the program was going great. It was my baby. We launched it in Richmond. We expanded it across the footprint. And when I was wanting to do more and we started customer service programs in the call centers and hiring people with disabilities in the bank, I felt like there wasn't much more for me to do. And my manager at the time, who I will not name, said, Meg, this may not be the place for you anymore because you're a big thinker. And you need to think about what it is you want to do next in here, because I think you've kind of plateaued here. So at the time I was so angry. I was like, how can someone be turning me away because I have big ideas? And, I was so grateful for it as I look back at it now, because he gave me such a gift in saying, you've got bigger dreams here and we're not going to be able to help you fulfill them. And he was right. And so I had a few more years of doing other things that led me to starting Global Disability Inclusion, as you read in my bio. I spent 10 years at Booz Allen Hamilton, which led me to, I ran their employee resource group for people with disabilities. I disclose all the time I have epilepsy, so that's kind of my personal connection to this.
Right.
I also have a niece who has Down syndrome. So it was personal for me, but also I knew the business opportunities around it. So I spent a lot of years doing kind of deep consulting engagements around hiring and recruiting and diversity and project management, and all of those skills led me to where I am today.
I can remember like it was yesterday, you creating that position for yourself. And I was so proud of you. It was like, hey, there's a need here and it's something that I can fill. And I was just so proud of you taking that step, because that was almost, okay, let me send the president a letter. It's like, what, really? You just go to the top, right? If you want to get things done, go think, rather than talk to somebody who goes, I don't know about that, go to somebody who really saw the value of that. And I was so proud of you during that period of time. Well, who do you hope is listening today or watching today? Who are you wanting to reach? Who does your business service?
Gosh, well, I'll give you two answers. One, I think you have a couple of different audiences, right? I think it's the people that are, you got your book title behind you, I Got the Job. You got the people who are wanting to present themselves in a positive light and look for employment opportunities. So I think there's that audience of people who are like, what's next in my career? What should I do next? How do I create the next thing for me? And the opportunities are endless. So that's what I would encourage folks is don't be afraid of your entrepreneurial spirit. Don't be afraid that it's going to be hard. Yes, it will be hard, but I've always had this mantra, and I think it has served me well, of saying, well, I'm going to do this and see how it goes. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to try something else. And I think you have to have that as an entrepreneur, because so much of what you're doing, and actually in your career in general, because nobody stays at jobs for 35 years anymore. People take what they learn from this job and then move on to the next thing, and what level that can take them. So just having that spirit of discovery wherever you are in your career. For my audience, primarily I work with human resource folks, human resource managers, chief diversity officers, some C-suite people, obviously in the Valuable 500 work that I do. So I know we'll dive a little bit deeper into what it is I'm doing now, but I hope that audience hears the messages that we have around disability inclusion and the opportunity to expand diversity initiatives to include people with disabilities, because we often say disability is the forgotten diversity segment. So I want to help elevate that conversation on a global level.
Right, right. Well, let's talk about it. You introduced it and said, let's talk about what do you do? So now you're in touch with major organizations and maybe even some smaller organizations, and you're talking to their HR people or their diversity people. Just what do you provide? What do you see, and then what do you provide? That whole package.
Yeah, when we start working with a company, one of the first things we do is an assessment. Some people call it an audit. I hate calling it an audit because I'm not the federal government telling you what you're doing right or wrong.
Right.
I'm assessing where you are. What are your current programs? And we really look at, from a company perspective, the employee life cycle. So from sourcing to recruiting, onboarding, performance management, development, all the way until someone exits and decides to move on. The company touches any employee at each of those different phases within their career. And a lot of times when we do our assessment, we see that there are not touch points that really connect to employees with disabilities, so they can feel that they're not getting the supports that they need. So I'll give you an example. A lot of times the online job application processes are not accessible. A great example is maybe someone with dyslexia. It takes them longer to get through the questionnaire, and they get timed out and things don't automatically save. They can't print out the application, so they could actually work on it at home and then just fill it in later when they go back online. So there are things that companies can do that make it more accessible and inclusive of people with varying disabilities. So disability is a broad spectrum. We're about, Monday is the 31st anniversary of the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. So when the ADA first came out, it really hit the big buckets of things that limited a major life activity like seeing, hearing, walking, right? But now the definition has expanded so much because we know so much more about the brain and neurodiversity. We weren't even talking about autism 30 years ago. 1 in 4 kids today has autism. We know more about the brain from traumatic brain injury and PTSD, which are the signature war wounds that we are having today with our veterans coming home. So it includes so much more than it used to. And that's exciting from a standpoint of we're being more accepting of people that are different, and realizing that no one is, normal, right? Everyone's got their thing that they're good at and their thing that they're not so great at. So that's one of the exciting things about this time, is that companies are starting to see, I really need to open up my diversity programs to include people with disabilities.
Is there a compliance part of that? Are there certain things that companies are by law required to do? So that would be when we go in and we do an assessment, whether you frame it this way or not, you're basically saying you're kind of out of compliance with the mandated things in these areas. And then there's a whole nother part that I'm going to hold off for another question, and that's the embracing of this. Because just my personal example with that, Meg, is that my most popular class in the last 17 years was performance enhancing feedback for people in leadership roles. Almost in every company that I taught it, it was a mandated course. There was a resistance to it simply because it was mandated. So when I got people in my class, they were reluctant to even be there, but they were a physical person in a chair. Then my job was to convince them there's value in learning this beyond just the compliance part of it. That it's actually make your job easier with it. So talk a little bit, if you will, about maybe how your business is structured, and do you bump into compliance first and then hopefully get past compliance, that type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, we have a roadmap on our website, which is globaldisabilityinclusion.com. It's called The Evolution to Disability Competitive. And so it's most companies, even 10, 15 years ago, disability was not on their radar, right? The ADA happened 31 years ago. And then 6, 7 years ago, we had what's called Section 503 of the Rehabilitation Act, which set aspirational goals that 7% of all new hires across all job groups had to be people with disabilities. So for the first time ever, companies now had targets that they had to meet and work towards them. And this was a requirement for federal contractors. So that immediately moved 250,000 companies, because we have 250,000 federal contractors in the US, from that bucket of not interested at all into that compliance bucket really quickly, right? So they had to comply. And it also created an incredible opportunity for culture shift, because we moved from don't ask, don't tell about disability to tell me about your disability and how can we support you. And so we're still in that shift right now, where we're having those better conversations and asking people to disclose and self-ID with their disabilities so we can support you as a company. So as it goes, it's, not interested, then you go to compliance, then you go to, we're building our competencies, like you're learning about disabilities. Then you're building organizational capabilities, right? What are we going to offer people with disabilities? Not only our employees, but our customers as well. And then the last bucket is what we call disability competitive, that you're looking at disability as a competitive advantage and ensuring that disability is a thread throughout all lines of your business. And that's what we want to help companies get to. The compliance bucket is the boring bucket, right?
Yeah, even as you said that last one, I want you to talk a little bit more about that. That's the exciting one. It's almost, as I was thinking about what questions that we could bang around today, it was almost like, I think that Meg in some ways is working, trying to put herself out of business. I want to get to where this is not even an issue anymore. And of course, from your comment at the beginning, you're saying, as an entrepreneur, you're always ready to change. whether or not that ever happens, it's like, I think that's her goal. Her true goal is, let's make this not even an issue anymore, and I'll move on and do another business somewhere. But talk about that competitive advantage part.
Yeah, and there unfortunately are not that many companies that are there. There are a couple of great ones. Microsoft is doing amazing work in this space, as you would expect, right?
Right.
They were one of the first companies to actually set up to a accessibility office that focuses on employees and customers. They have a chief accessibility officer, a woman who is deaf, that reports directly to the CEO. So they have elevated disability to a whole new level within the organization. Right. JP Morgan Chase has done something similar, but the majority of companies aren't there yet. They're still trying to figure out what are the low-level pieces of integrating disability into diversity. So getting companies through those various steps, and you'll see the map on our website. It looks like it's very linear, but of course it's not. You know, you may be competitive in one part of your business, but just getting up to speed on another part. So it's really important to analyze exactly where you are and make sure you're continuing to have that forward progress. But you're absolutely right. If I don't ever have to answer the question, what's my return on investment for disability inclusion? And if we can ensure that this is not a special initiative anymore, I'd be happy to retire.
Yeah. You know, even as I was thinking about it, it's like when I assessed myself and I said, where do I hear the most about disability stuff? You know, it was amazing to me that July is Disability Pride Month. And it's like I'd never heard of it before. And I looked up disability. I looked up in terms of July is the month of what? And I came up with all kinds of stuff. Then disability is not even on the list. You know, it's a shame that, you know, it's National Hemp Month, it's National Watercolor Month, it's National Anti-Boredom Month, it's National Baked Bean Month, and I've got 15 of them here, and I don't see National, you know, Disability Pride Month on here.
I know. Again, we're the forgotten diversity segment, and I was talking to a company the other day who's relatively new in the initiative, and they said, Meg, we just don't know where to start. Disability is so complex. There's the neurodiversity, there's the physical aspect, all of this. And I said, no, wait a minute. This was a major brand, and we just finished June, which of course was Pride Month for the LGBT community. You could not turn on your TV, open a newspaper, and not hear from every major corporation on the planet about Pride Month, which is fantastic. And I'll admit it here on the first one, say it, I'm jealous of how much progress the LGBTQ movement has had, because they're light years ahead of where we are. So what I said to this person was, you know, I couldn't turn on the TV last month without seeing 10 of your commercials a day about the LGBTQ community. There are as many nuances and differences and areas to focus on in that community as they are in the disability community. Why do you want to just start with one piece of our community? You're not saying, oh, let's start with the L or the G or the B or the T. You went all in. So we want you to go all in with disability. And he was like, oh, I hadn't thought about it that way. And so we got to stop being afraid of disability. I mean, I know it makes people uncomfortable, but you're never going to evolve until you have those uncomfortable conversations or see what is it that else I need to learn to make this work for our organization.
Yeah, we talked about you know, touching leaders. It's like what is the thing that they need to know? Is it that they just don't know enough? And if they did know more information, they'd go, oh, well, now I see, now I get it. Is it a lack of information? Is it an emotional detachment? Is it a fear of not knowing how, you know, people will say, I don't know, I see a person with whatever type of disability. I don't know, should I help them? Should I not help them? Is there some of that? What do leaders need to hear or change, or however you want to handle it?
Yeah, you know, I think the biggest thing is everyone wants to come at this intentionally. And unfortunately, our world has this cancel culture right now. So companies are afraid of getting it wrong. Or if I jump in and I have a misstep, is that going to be worse than not jumping in at all? And, it's a concern, but, what I advise companies to do is like, you can wade into the deep end. You don't have to jump all in immediately, but we can get you there. And, I also tell folks, I've got like 3 pilots with 3 different companies right now. You can do almost anything in a pilot and be forgiven for it, right? Because you're testing things.
Right.
You're trying different models. What's working? We're going to investigate this part of the business. And does it work over here? And who do we need to partner with? And I've had companies that have piloted things for 18 months before saying, yes, this is where we're going to, put the stake in the ground. We've devised what our program is going to look like. And now we're ready to go forward because they've connected with the community. They've connected with experts. There's a saying in the disability community, nothing about us without us, meaning don't think you know what we need. Ask us. Ask your employees with disabilities how you can support them better. Ask your customers what they need. Don't make assumptions because it's easier to design for disability, whether it's a product or a service, than to add it on later. Because what we know is if you design for disability, it's actually good for everybody. So think of the, automatic manual doors where you press the button and the door opens for you.
Right.
Everybody uses those. So, and there's so many examples like that life is better. Look at us now doing all of us working remotely over Zoom. This has opened up so many opportunities for people with disabilities that either have, complex medical conditions and need to work from home or transportation issues. So it's about now everyone wants to work from home. People are like, oh, I want to go move to Florida because I can. I don't have to live in wherever anymore.
Just hearing you talk, I'm thinking that I'd like to see more commercials talking about that. Hey, listen, this is something that was originally put in place to accommodate our diversity or inclusion package, and yet look at how it is advantageous to all these other people. Oftentimes, I looked at what do I see on TV around disability, and for some reason, maybe it's just the TV shows I'm watching, it's all about then they're asking for money. And that is a turnoff for people. And it's like, hey, maybe we need to have some commercials where we talk about how your business is going to be better because you're accommodating one group, but other groups are benefiting by it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's part of the cultural shift that's happening too, because disability historically has been a nonprofit issue, a government issue. We haven't been particularly nice to people with disabilities. We still pay them sub-minimum wage in many cases. We institutionalize them. So corporations haven't really viewed it as a talent solution or a customer service strategy. And that's the shift that we have going on. So there's very much that cultural mindset of people going, oh, wait a minute, for years I've been told I should donate, write a check. That's the best thing I can do for people with disabilities is to help them in whatever programs they have. And now we're telling companies, no, it's more than that. People with disabilities should be part of your talent solution strategies. And you should be thinking about people with disabilities in a different light. There was a great 60 Minutes episode, I want to say on the 18th, with Anderson Cooper talking about companies hiring people on the autism spectrum and the talents and abilities that they brought to the workplace that were helping them solve some of their biggest problems. So I think the more we can educate around things like that, the better conversations that we'll have, and companies will start to see, oh, my competitors are doing it. Why shouldn't I be doing it?
Right.
Companies are finding leading or answers to some of their hardest problems because they're hiring people with disabilities.
I've got another 7 questions that we're not
Let's
going
do
to
it.
get to because we're running out of time. I'm thinking that we're going to have to schedule you again right now to be back on the show again. But if you had a final word and whatever you want to say to whomever, what would it be? Your final thoughts.
What's immediately coming to mind is, the Nike slogan, just do it. Get started in any way, shape, or form in realizing that disability should be part of your diversity strategy. So I just finished co-authoring a report with Mercer, which, as you know, is the largest HR consulting firm. And we found in reviewing their database, 90% of companies explore gender differences, 75% explore race and ethnicity, only 4% investigate disability as a diversity segment within their company.
That's shameful. It is what it is.
So we have I'm not retiring anytime soon, Craig. With those statistics.
I kind of gleaned that from our conversation. Meg, where can people reach you? They want to find out that what was intriguing to me is not only just your standard approach, but all the pilot stuff. And hey, we'll customize something that you can try out. Don't worry about it. That's really cool. Where can people find all that information?
Yeah, you can go to my website, globaldisabilityinclusion.com. You can email me directly, meg@globaldisabilityinclusion.com. Happy to answer any questions. If you didn't write that down fast enough or whatever, go to our website. There's a contact form there. Happy to connect with anybody. Clearly, you can tell I'm passionate on this topic, so I'm always happy to talk to folks and see how we can help.
Yeah, we're gonna reach out right now and say any of you who are in a company who really could do more with that. You need to represent your company. Check out the website, then take that information to the people who can make it happen. Or if you're at the top of the company, check out Global Diversity Inclusion. Meg's got a lot of stuff there that I know is going to help you out. It's been a pleasure. Definitely got to get you back on because I know we got a lot more to talk about.
I know. Thanks for having me, Craig. It's been a lot of fun.
It's been super. That's it for another edition of Big in Biz with DiViz. My name's Craig DiVizzio. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay cool, have good thoughts. See you.